It's December 26th, the day after Christmas of 2019. And on this particular day, me and my dad have planned to go down and see my grandma, who lived about 2.5 hours away at the time. We leave the house around 10 to 11 a.m. that day, and as we're driving up north, we're watching the snow begin to show more and more. When we get there, we say hi and hug and everything. My uncle is there as well. And we sit down on the couches in her apartment and chat for a little while. I remember going to this restaurant by the lake in town, having some dinner there, then afterwards coming back to her apartment and watching all these little films that people in the town actually made through the years, through this DVD onto the TV screen, and just having the greatest time. I remember that night we all go to sleep. Me and my dad are laying on this little cushion on the floor of her apartment, and when we wake up for the next day, what I can remember is my last interaction with her. Now, I'd gone through a massive growth spurt throughout this time period. I think it was about 8 inches in 2 years. And so I was sort of trying to measure up where my eyes would meet with the mirrors on her wall that were stacked pretty much all the way to the ceiling. She makes a joke saying the next time you're here, your height is gonna match up with the tallest mirror on the wall. And I smile. We hugged, said goodbye, and little did I know that that was going to be the last time I saw my grandma in her apartment in good health. When the lockdown period started up 3 months later, my grandma had taken a fall in the grocery store, and from that point moving forward, things only continued to get worse. 4 months later, I get the news that she's been diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. This was in July, and fast forward to October of that year, she's now having trouble walking and getting around. And during this rapid digression, I was not able to see her at all because the health crisis was at its worst during that time period. 2 months later in December, she was in an assisted living facility, which wouldn't be too bad. You know, they decorated her room full of the things she enjoyed in her old apartment, and the drive would be half an hour less. But after 2 weeks of that, the people working there could see that this was not going to be enough of an accommodation for my grandmother. So 2 weeks later, she was moved into a nursing home facility. She didn't really have any space in there to put up any of her old artwork. She couldn't do art anymore because, like I said, the dementia had rapidly decreased her mobility, and she was stuck there for about 4 to 5 months without really being able to see us because of the health crisis being so bad at the time. Fast forward to May of 2021, and by this point I'm 15 years old, and am finally able to see her again after a 1.5 years of not being able to go visit her. We stopped by at her old spot, had some lunch, and then later on drove up to the beautiful community that she used to reside in just 6 months prior. After that, we head over to the nursing home, and I'm feeling both excited and nervous to see her for the first time in so long. Me and my dad have been directed to sit on this little table outside where this patio is, and when I look over at the door, I see the nurse wheeling my grandma out of the building. She looked a lot different. Her hair was much shorter, she was now in a wheelchair, and of course we had to wear those fancy schmancy masks at the time, so I couldn't exactly fully see her face, but I could tell that she'd lost a lot of weight since the last time we'd seen her. She was very soft-spoken now. She definitely didn't seem to have as much energy as she used to, but like I said, nonetheless, I was just happy to finally be able to see her again. Now, during the lockdown period, I'd had a lot of time to reflect. And I sort of came to the conclusion that throughout growing up, I wasn't as present as I could have been around my grandma. I loved being on Instagram more than anything throughout middle school. I loved playing Minecraft all the time when I was even younger. And I felt as though I was sort of so indulged in these things while I was around her. And knowing how poorly she was doing and that things would never be the same as they once were, I carried a lot of regret and pain in my heart from not spending my time with her to the best of my ability. I wasn't on my phone much at all throughout the lockdown period. I spent a lot of my time outdoors by myself, which was something I hadn't done really much at all throughout my life. And because of this pain of regret, I knew I had to make the most of my final years with my grandma while she was still alive. And so every time, and I'm telling you, every time I had the opportunity to, I would go down there for a day trip with my dad. 2 to 2.5 hours there and back, usually twice a month. It was not like it used to be. Usually me and my dad would go down there every 2 or 3 months, spend the night, and then come back home the next day. Before, we would usually do a lot of fun things like walk around town, eat out, play games, and that sort of thing. Now all we could do was sit there and sort of try our best to communicate with my grandma in the nursing home. It wasn't always easy, you know, I was doing sport, I was trying to keep up with schoolwork the best I could, very heavy schoolwork during that time period. And I was tagging along for those day trips whenever I had the chance. But I knew that in the end it would be worth it to get the most out of my time with her whilst I could. To be able to have that sense of knowing that I didn't have to look back with any regrets one day. To be able to know that the pain of regretting that would far outweigh the pain that I was currently feeling of what it took to get to see her each time. We had our good visits, tough visits, but all in all, I'm really grateful that I was able to take full advantage of the fact that I was able to see her as much as I could. And I'm really grateful that I was able to spend that time with her, even though it wasn't always the best day. On October 6th of last year, we visited her for what was unknowingly on our way up, our final time ever seeing her again. She was hooked up to a ventilator, unable to speak, but we could both tell by the way she was looking over at us that she wanted to show as much love as we could, and we showed that back in return. I kiss her goodbye, we leave, and on the way back, my dad tells me that he strongly believes that was our final time ever seeing my grandma again. 3 days later, my dad comes into my room, wakes me up, and gives me the news that my grandma has passed away very early that morning. I'm actually feeling sick that day, so I just took the day off work and I spend my time reflecting on me and my grandma's time spent together throughout the years. And a little over a month later, we hold a memorial service for her in her old town. We held the service in the church that she used to live very close to. We hung her artwork up all over the walls and everything like that. We had a good turnout, about 50 or so people. I was able to sort of recite my speech in front of everyone, and I got to see my cousin for the first time in about 6 years without a mask on. We spread her ashes in a little garden that she'd actually told my dad she'd want them to be spread about 10 to 12 years prior. We sang a little song in her honor all together, and we sent her off well. After that, when it was time to head home and everything, I sort of felt like I was hit by this grief that, oddly enough, I hadn't felt when I first got the news of her passing. This was about a month after I first started doing content, so about 2 days later, I made a little short form video, basically just expressing how I felt and sort of talking about how important it is to push through no matter how you're feeling. This feeling passed after about 3 or 4 days, but I always found it sort of interesting. It was like everything sort of hit me, and there was a deeper connection beyond just losing my grandmother. Even though my grandma's nursing home was about half an hour from the town she used to live in, we'd still visit the people she used to be friends with a lot. And we'd sometimes drive through the town before or after a visit. Now we were gonna have almost none of that anymore. And it all just sort of hit me that this was truly the closing of a beautiful era in my life. And that right there is another reason for why you need to embrace the time you have with your loved ones as much as you can right now. Because you never know when it will be your last time, not only with them, but with the community that you grew up surrounded by. I hope this message helped you today, my friend. Keep putting in that work towards becoming at least 1% better each and every day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.